Hey, it's Tesla Canuck here. I'm back with another video. It's been about 6 months now that I've owned the Model 3, so I thought it was time to do a 6-month review. Fortunately, I've been able to document my experience with the Model 3. I know there's a lot of people out there who are either just taking delivery or will take delivery very soon, or maybe just recently got their Model 3. So I thought a long-term review type of video might be useful to them. So anyhow, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go for a nice scenic drive. I'm going to try 3 cameras, get them all set up, and basically have a snippet of some of my videos that I think chronicle my experience over the last 6 months, and I'll do some commentary around it. Also, I'll have, of course, the display so you can see where the car is, and the forward-facing nice scenery. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I guess I'll talk about is my delivery experience from 6 months ago. And at the time, it was very chaotic because Tesla was under a lot of, I guess, a time crunch with a bunch of cars having been delivered to Canada. There were thousands of Model 3s just sitting in parking lots near the airport. So it was a very busy time for Tesla. That being said, I thought they handled the delivery very well, and I was very happy with my experience. The only issue was that they lost my wire transfer. So yeah, the lesson learned from that particular experience was you should probably bring a bank draft or something. Anyhow, okay, so the next part of my journey that I want to talk about is it's my 3rd video in, and I think it was like the 2nd day I had the car. I needed to go and get it tinted because I don't know, I don't like driving around in a fishbowl. So anyhow, my tint video was I think my 3rd video, and it was my first video to like really do well. I got about 30,000 views of it. Now, I mean, that's great that the video did well. The tint job itself, well, if you haven't seen the video, I'll do a link in the bottom in the description. You guys can watch the full video. But basically, no one had seen a Model 3 before. I was one of the first people in the Toronto area to get their Model 3. So basically, they had no idea what to do with the rear window, which is all glass, right? So they only did like half of it. I've kind of gotten used to it at this point, but I would really like to get it fixed in the future. So, moral of the story, take your car to a tint shop. If you're going to get a Model 3 tint, do it at a shop that has a lot of experience. Unfortunately, that wasn't an option for me at the time. All right, so the next up on my journey is the charging experience with the Model 3. And for the most part, I've had a very good experience there. There was one time, and it's documented on video, where I had forgotten to plug in my car overnight, and now I was like, oh boy, I'm going to be late for work. So took the Model 3 to a nearby supercharger. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but it just so happened on that particular day, that supercharging station was having problems. So to make a long story short, I was late for work, but there's a learning out of there, and basically charging needs to be part of your routine, right? So I've now incorporated charging completely into my routine, nighttime, or when I get home and I don't think I'm going out again. It's just automatic now, where I go and I plug the car in. I've got the timer set so that it comes on and starts charging as soon as the rates are lower, so in the evening. So that was my learning around charging, and that might be helpful for some of you new buyers or people who are expected to receive your Model 3 soon. All right. Next up, the next video I want to talk about that kind of chronicles my experience. I don't know, I couldn't get that out. Is we went on a super long road trip in the summertime, and this was our first long road trip in an EV, even though We do also have a Model X, which we got in September of 2017. So I had lots of experience with a Tesla and with supercharging and all that kind of stuff, but it was mainly local. So this was our first, big drive in an EV. So we drove from Toronto to Quebec City. Can't remember exactly. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 kilometers. Return, maybe more, and it was a great learning experience. We stopped at several chargers. In the summertime, the range on the Model 3 Long Range Edition just exceeded my expectations, not even trying to conserve energy, so going maybe 10% over the speed limit. I was on track to get about 600 kilometers of range in the summertime. I'll have to do a conversion to miles when I produce the video, but yeah, so that was very cool. Some other things that we learned, well, we learned that there's no difference between an ICE vehicle and an EV if it's a Tesla to make long trips. If you don't have a Tesla, I'm not sure that the infrastructure is quite ready yet, because in Canada anyhow, there's just a bunch of level 2 kind of slow charging. If you didn't have a supercharging network like with a Tesla, I don't think you could make those kind of trips today. Hopefully that will change in the future. All right, so that was the next ones. And then I had my huge video, which was, I called it that, Tesla, autopilot had saved my life today, or something to that effect. And what happened was some goofball, did an extremely dangerous maneuver. I had my dash cam running at the time, and I put it up on YouTube on my channel. So mainly what happened there, and I know there were a lot of comments on this particular video, and a small percentage of people are very kind of conspiracy oriented. They felt that the Tesla didn't do the initial reaction, that it was all me, or that I sped up or whatever, right? So anyhow, people will believe what they believe, and I'm not going to kind of get into that right now. But anyhow, I guess the moral of that story is that yes, the Tesla did the initial reaction, and one of my viewers, who's a particle physicist and has a business, so Crash Animation Studio is their name. He actually did a recreation based on some pretty clever, Google Maps, and so he was able to judge distances and all this kind of stuff. So he could calculate the speeds of both vehicles. He was able to determine that the reaction time was 0.4 of a second, which is kind of humanly impossible. So, I'm pretty quick, right? I do a good job when it comes to reacting things, but I don't think I'm superhuman. So yeah, that was the car did that initial maneuver. So that was a great learning experience. It was a big video. Had to turn off comments for a while because it just got crazy. The learning, I guess, from that in terms of my 6-month experience is you don't want to necessarily rely on all of the safety features of your Model 3, but it's nice to know that it's there, right? Will it work like it did for me in every single situation? I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm not sure I quite trust the technology to that level yet, but it's great to know that you have it. But please drive defensively. Don't take it for granted. So I think that was kind of the learning of that experience over the past several months. My next video that did kind of well was I did my first unboxing video. So I ordered a bunch of stuff online from the Tesla online store, and I unboxed it. So I guess there's not really too much to do about the ownership experience there, other than there's a great marketplace for stuff for your Model 3 that's really cool, right? So, and that's just from the Tesla online store. If you look at third parties, there's many of them out there that sell some really cool stuff for your Model 3. I'm gonna continue to do those unboxing videos whenever I get a chance, but that was pretty interesting. My next video that kind of chronicles my experience is, you know this when you buy your Model 3, that it's an exceptionally beautiful car. I know that's subject to interpretation. You know, there are people that might not like the design. I happen to love the design. And I did a video which was a 4K, this was my first 4K video, that is basically a 360 walk around of the Model 3. And that video did quite well. And it just shows off how beautiful the vehicle is. Even if you hate Tesla, you know, it's hard to deny that the car looks great. You know, right? At least you know, I guess there's some subjectivity there, but in my opinion, anyhow, and I think that video really shows it off. And you know, you can show off your Model 3 in the parking lot or you know, on the highway as you're driving to work. So it's a beautiful car. All right, so fast forwarding, so I'm now into my third season with the Model 3. So we're into winter now, and my first winter, like real winter video, was you know, showing how the rear wheel drive with the winter tires performs in a snowstorm. And that video did really well. So the learning in terms of the 6-month experience is that if you were an early adopter like me, and you know, the all-wheel drive wasn't available, and you only have the rear-wheel drive. I can't get rear-wheel drive out today. I don't know. You know, it's not a big deal, right? Or if you wanted to save the money and not buy all-wheel drive, the rear-wheel drive performs very well with winter tires, and I think that video really demonstrates that. I have another video where I do an icy hill test, and that also shows that your experience in the wintertime with rear-wheel drive is it's going to be a good one, right? I haven't come across anything that it hasn't been able to handle, and we've had some pretty significant snowfall even early in the winter season. All right, my next video that I want to talk about is there was a release from Tesla. It's called Winter Optimization, and it did some funky things with the windows. That was a polarizing video. That was my first like really polarizing one. Some people really hated it, you know, thought that I was whining about the changes that were made, and you know, maybe I was a bit, I don't know, right? But bottom line is, I still don't like the way that the windows behave after that winter optimization. So some people might be fine with it, and that's great, you know, to each his own, right? So that video, I think the learning there of the 6-month experience is actually something a little bit different. I think it highlights that your car, when you buy a Model 3, it's going to continue to get better over time. And that's very unique. I mean, that just hasn't been the way the auto industry has worked, right? So from an ownership experience perspective over the last 6 months, I can tell you I've gotten dozens of software updates to the Model 3 that have made the Model 3 better, which is awesome, right? I mean, how can you not think that's awesome? That's awesome. So even though I didn't like that particular update, it's fantastic to know that my Model 3 is going to continue to get better over time. All right, I talked about the Icy Hill video. The last thing I'm going to mention is, you know, if someone were to ask me which video that I did where I thought it should have performed better than it did, and I'm going to say I did a video about an issue with the autopilot and the navigation, the speed limits. And I think it's a very important issue because I see it as a safety issue. And I'm going to link all of these videos that I'm talking about down below in the description. But the short version of it is that speed limits are incorrect, right? And it doesn't happen that often, but it happens often enough where you'll be bombing down a freeway, a divided freeway, which in Canada, typically that's 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles per hour, or 62 miles per hour, whatever the conversion is. And all of a sudden, the mapping software thinks that the speed limit is 30 kilometers an hour on a divided freeway. And it's gotten better over time. It used to be that the car would just almost come to a screeching halt when that happened. Now it's a much more gradual reduction in speed when you're on the autopilot. So I think the learning there in terms of the 6-month experience is that nothing's necessarily perfect, right? I think Tesla does a fantastic job. Really, kudos all around, right? But it's not all sunshine and roses. There are some issues that need to be dealt with, right? And that's one of them. Anyhow, that's kind of the journey. That was my 6-month journey. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. That's it. Tesla Canuck. Over and out.